بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم السلام عليكم. Let's begin our next session with verse number 44. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم فذرني ومن يكذب بهذا الحديث سنستدرجهم من حيث لا يعلمون وأملي لهم إن كيدي متين. So these two are very powerful reminders here. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so leave to me, O Prophet, those who reject the message. We will gradually draw them to destruction in ways they cannot comprehend. I only delay their end for a while, but my planning is flawless. So if you recall what was happening before that, we had the whole story and the scenario of the people of the garden, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed them with more wealth and produce and fruits and what have you, and they wanted to save and not give to poor people, and they had a plan, and Allah had a plan. They went to their garden and they saw that all of that was destroyed, and then they came around, they accepted their mistake, they realized that they were the ones who were wrongdoers, and then they ask Allah's forgiveness, and they also hoped that Allah will forgive them and give them better. So as part of that, we were discussing that, we said that look, when Allah gives you more, people can actually be more grateful, more disciplined, and actually do more good, or they can become lazy and complacent and start falling into sins and disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, transgressing the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the second thing that happens. And when people do that, now one of the two things can happen in general. Either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings some sort of a calamity, a punishment, put some sort of brakes on you, and you realize that, look, things are not working out for me. I need to sort out my life. Or the alternative can happen, and Allah can give you more of the dunya, and then you can basically become more relaxed, more disobedient, and so on and so forth. So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning here, that especially you see a lot of disobedient people who reject Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala openly, fight the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala openly, criticize it openly, and so on and so forth. And one may say that, how come these people are the one who are excelling and progressing and growing in their worldly matters, and the people who believe are not? So Allah is clearly reminding and promising and telling us in 44 here that leave them, right? The people who are rejecting this hadith, leave them, and I will gradually bring them to their destruction. So it may not be tomorrow, the day after, the next month, what have you, but be sure and be certain that that's what they will reach. And when it comes to them, then it will come to them so certainly that they wouldn't even realize. And we have seen some of these things happening in our life, right? Like all these things that happen, and people write them off as natural disasters or some sort of punishments, like whether it be COVID or Corona, or thunderstorms or hurricanes or fire. And you realize, subhanAllah, like people think, oh, everything is so fine, the systems are all in place. And you realize all of a sudden Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings something. And if people were to learn from it, then it will really humble them. Okay, brother, you can come to this side, inshallah, if you guys. Yeah. And then the next one, Allah says that, I delay their end for a while, but Allah's plan is flawless. So that's just something to remember. Again, from a perspective of, if you see disbelievers, people who are fighting against justice, people who are being cruel, people who are transgressing, and you see that nothing is happening to them, realize that it's a long game. We may think, oh, it's too long. A month is too long. A week is too long. A year is too long. But in the end, it will all get settled. Or from our personal perspective, right? Looking at our life, making sure that we are disciplined. If things are going well in our life and we are transgressing and things keep going well, to watch out and be careful that Allah's punishment can come anytime. So moving on to the next one, 46, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَمْ تَسْأَلُهُمْ أَجْرًا فَهُمْ مِنْ مَغْرَمٍ مُثْقَلُونَ. So this is a very common thing. Or are you asking them for a reward for the message so that they are overburdened by debt. So many times what happens, people do not follow religion, and part of that is that they subconsciously think that if I follow religion, if I become religious, my life would not be as much fun, I would not have as much money, I would lose my potential of making money or being successful one way or the other. So that's what this kind of reminds me to. But following the religion is not something that will actually reduce your income, that will reduce your wealth, that will, because we know from the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you will not die until you have accumulated and earned everything that has been written for you. So, but sometimes we think that, okay, you know what? I don't want to be religious and I will not be successful. I don't want my kids to be religious because that will make them non-successful or unsuccessful and so on and so forth. Or we may think, okay, you know what? If I take time out for my salah, many young people, if I take time out for my salah, is reducing my productivity. I may not be able to perform well on my exams or my business or with my clients. So to realize that it's not like that. And when it comes to the matter of the dunya, one example I like to use is when people take coffee breaks. They don't think that, oh, it's reducing my productivity. They know I'm going to go on a coffee break, I'll come back and I'll be more productive. So we should really think about it and not take salah or any other aspects of religion to be something that's reducing from our success, our productivity, or our income potential. Moving on, 47. أم عندهم الغيب فهم يكتمون. Or do they have access to the record in the unseen, so they copy it for all to see? So meaning that, okay, the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now this can have several different reflections. One is, some people think, oh, I'm righteous, okay, or these type of people are righteous, and so on and so forth, as if they own the judgment. Or if my my religious leadership approves of me, then I'm righteous, and so on and so forth. Or if people approves of me, or if they have my validation, then I'm righteous. So something to think about, from a personal judgment perspective, to realize that the judgment is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and our actions are judged by the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not judged by the argument of any intellectual out there. So making sure that my actions, my statements, my thinking are in compliant with how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to be, and not just by what is popular among the people. So as you see all of this happening around you, the guidance and from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the following. فاصبر لحكم ربك ولا تكن كصاحب الحوت إذ نادى وهو مكظوم لولا أن تداركه نعمة من ربه لنبذ بالعراء وهو مذموم فاجتباه ربه فجعله من الصالحين. So the advice is to be patient. Okay, as you see all these different things happening, people not listening, whether it be just the regular friends and neighbors and colleagues or family members not listening, or not supporting you in your choices about the religions, or in your advice to them to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, continue to be patient. Okay, and just be patient and wait for the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the example of the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as is mentioned here, and called with the title of companion of the fish. Right? So this is the story of the Nabi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he got upset with his people and he left them, and by the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a fish or whale swallowed him, and there are details to it. But the main point being, from our reflection scope, is to be patient by the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects people. Right? So even though in this situation he was in the darkness, as it says that darkness of the night, the darkness of the water, and then the darkness of the belly of the fish, all these layers of protection and depth, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when his decree comes, then he can protect you out from any situation. So always trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no matter how difficult things are, how many problems you're surrounded with, to realize that if it's from the blessing or from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we can come out of it. So when people are in those type of situation, that's where you tap into. You tap into asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection, for guidance, for safety, for mercy, and not to think that it can come from anywhere other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even if you are righteous, right, as it says in verse number 50, that it's from Allah's choice, that Allah is the one who make people righteous. So what does this tells us? Like what kind of mindset, what kind of lessons can we learn from that? A is if we are struggling to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, easiest thing is to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our hearts and to turn our hearts to the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you are obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in one matter or the other, and you see someone else not obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then not to be arrogant, oh, look, I'm doing it, and looking down at people, but to realize that if Allah had not had mercy on you, then you would be like them as well. So this is really important because we can be it's a two-edged, double-edged sword, right? Because if you're too arrogant, then you can easily lose what you have. And at the same time, you don't want to be looking down at people, but you still want to be able to advise people with hikmah, with wisdom, with prioritization. And then lastly, it's a very important topic as well. وَإِن يَكَادُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَيُزْلِقُونَكَ بِأَبْصَارِهِمْ لَمَّا سَمِعُوا الذِّكْرَ ويقولون إنه لمجنون وما هو إلا ذكر للعالمين. So if I were to summarize verse number 51, it talks about two main uh, things, or two main weapons that people use against the people of truth. One of them is evil eye, right? Trying to cause harm and really hating the benefit or the blessing that someone may have and trying to cause harm with the evil eye. So this is something obviously from the matters of the ghaib, right? So you as someone trying to protect yourself and your family. So because everything in religion is balanced, right? Some people are so scared of this thing that oh, I don't want to do good, I don't want to be praying in public, or I don't want to go for Hajj or Umrah, or I don't want to spend my money on charity, or I don't want to do dawah, I don't want to seek knowledge or teach knowledge because people will give me ayn or evil eye, right? So that's another extreme, that you don't want to do good because you're so afraid of evil eye, right? And then there are some people who are like, oh, as if it doesn't exist. So we realize that this is a matter of the ghaib. So we take protection just like we take protection for the physical things, right? So we have these sanitizers here, so we can't see the bacteria and the germs, but we use them, right? And then it doesn't mean, oh, that I'm not going to come to the masjid, I'm not going to come to class. No, you do what you have to do, but you take your protection, you do so it mitigates your risk. Similarly, for these matters of evil eye or jinn or what have you, you take matters of protection such as saying Bismillah before you enter home, before you change your clothes, before you eat, before you drink. You read Quran, you read the afkar of protection and so on and so forth, and then you continue on with your life. The second weapon is name calling, hurting people by their tongue, calling them names. And that's something that still happens, whether at a community level, people will call names to your community, or people may call name to you to isolate you from themselves, so that they say, oh, he's different, she's different, right? They are, so backward or conservatives, whatever names they would call, right? And that's meant to deter you from being persistent and steadfast on the deen. However, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, look, at the end of the day, this book, this Quran is nothing but a reminder to the entire mankind. So what do we do? What action do we take from this? Well, am I taking it as a reminder? Right? From all the content, all the lectures, all the videos, all the films or movies or series or episodes or web series, whatever I consume, how much of Quran am I consuming in my life? Right? How much am I understanding? How much am I thinking about? How much am I trying to implement? And then when it comes to other, I may be doing a whole bunch of different things. I'm trying to sell them, hey, hire me, get me to do this thing, sending my resume, or selling them some product I have or some service I have, or asking them to make donation to my favorite project, whatever I'm asking them for. What kind of activity am I doing to remind them and connect people to Quran, or call people to Quran and Islam? So this is, subhanAllah, the end of this surah. And we finished with AlQalam. Inshallah, we'll start the next one next week, and we'll go and do our Arabic session. Before that, any comments, many of you guys? reflections, comments, anything you remember from this session?
It's just like an open reminder that uh, whatever you are going to do, Allah has already decided fate for you, and like it's sort of a ultimate warning as well. If you read from it that uh, it can be far, like on the day
Mm,
of judgment, or it can be within the world, but you are going to get punished for your wrongdoings or etc. Something like that. It
yeah,
can be far or it can be near, but it is going to be there. You cannot run away from it.
good, good. Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point because a major self-deterrent for us as ummah, as people, is the lack of patience, right? We just want, especially now compared to like 10 years ago, what have you, how everything has been set around us, is that patience now, people are getting less and less used to patience because they want everything today, shortcuts, being having victorious tomorrow, big wins, and all the sort of instantaneous gratification. So that's why people, I think, that deep work and that concept of being patient and playing the long game is something that's kind of going away. And just realizing that, to realize that, look, am I quitting too soon? Am I being impatient? Am I being too greedy, too hasty? And, looking at that long timeline. Good. Okay. جزاك الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.